Good evening. It must be Wednesday, and it must be 7. This is the City Voice, and that's Paul Crowley, and I'm Joe Spina.
Hey, Joe.
How you doing, Paul?
Pretty
By the
good.
way, Lynn's in.
Lynn's in.
Yeah, what's
and
in?
so's LynnCAM in.
You're kidding.
The latest news on the street is now you can get all City's Voice, all shows, the last 3 and all future shows will be available on YouTube. By Friday of the following week, go to YouTube/LynnCAM TV, and if you missed a show, you can watch it online, streaming. How's that?
Yeah.
We're making,
Now, I'm going to let you in a little secret, fella.
what's that?
Well, from Florida, I got emails all day. They were watching 2 of our shows. It's actually 2 shows, plus tonight will make the 3rd. They watched them, would you believe it? And they told me not to get rid of you. I said, I won't. Should I get rid of Paul?
So I got to believe
Yeah.
that all your buddies down in Florida
Yeah.
go out, have a few drinks, and they're trying to think of something to do, and one of them says, let's go home and watch Joe. And it's like a big event for them, right? Because they get to really goof on you.
think?
Yeah, I think
Actually,
so.
they're your buddies too, and they don't partake of adult beverages anymore. They happen to be in the 12-step program, all of them. Folks, I don't drink, but they did. And that's that. And by the way, Georgia tuned in too. And we're going to be around the world pretty soon, folks.
I also heard that
Yeah,
they're
go
going to the shows are being simulcast in Peabody on
Peabody's picking
Tuesdays.
up. Really?
great.
Okay, so now we have to give a lot of credit to, without a doubt, Mr. Senor Pedro Diaz Jr.
Yep.
and Dave Riley Jr.
Yep.
who are, and my sweetie Deliano, you know, our sound man. Look at the handsome guy, right? Our number here is 781. You tell me I don't have to say 781 anymore, Paul?
I don't know. Some people probably need to know.
5969641.
Yep.
What's in, what's out? You know what?
Lynn
Is
is
Lynn Hospital
in.
out, or is it? And to tell us,
We
go
have
down the line.
We have the Save the Union Hospital group, not to be confused with the Wayne Losey Save the Union Hospital group, right?
Right.
So there's a conflicting, the little friction here?
I don't know. Is there?
Is it like Republican, Democrat, Hatfield, McCoy?
I don't know.
Katerina, how are you?
Hi, good
Calvin
evening.
and Andrea, right?
Yes.
And you're from Saugus, actually.
Saugus.
So this is broadening out. Nice to have you back again.
Nice to be
so
back.
give us a little update and jump in any time. What's happening?
So as the news reported that the Attorney General had struck out Partners deal to grow in Massachusetts, which would have added hundreds of doctors, physicians to Partners Health Network, and that would have included expanding Salem Hospital, and also as they acquired the 3 hospitals, they would have transferred the mental health beds from those hospitals to Union hospitals, kind of playing chess pieces, so not really expanding the mental health care at Union Hospital, but more bringing it in from other hospitals and moving the surgical beds to those other hospitals. So so when the Attorney General, not the Attorney General, but Judge Sanders, with the antitrust suit in Massachusetts, said put a halt to Partners' growth, it changed their
All right,
plans.
let me slow this down because it's going over my head. You mentioned last week something about the Attorney General, which she brought up. It appears you said that the Attorney General, current Attorney General, may be sympathetic to Lynn's plight. Didn't you mention that last week?
Yes. I wouldn't say sympathetic to Lynn's plight, but opposed to the Partners plan.
Well, same difference, basically. We become
Not
beneficiaries.
necessarily, because at the end of the day, you know, what the Partners plan is doing is, as
Katerina pointed out.
Katerina's pointing out, there's the accumulating more doctors. There was the buying the community hospital in South Shore. South Shore Community Hospital was a big target, which a court said they couldn't do. And then there's a third piece, which is the reconfiguration in this area, where they acquire Hallmark Healthcare and then consolidate some of the mental health facilities in Lynn and move the surgical beds to Melrose and Salem, I think.
So if you're moving the surgical beds out, you're losing your hospital, right, Calvin?
Well, full service in that definition. And that's what we're advocating for, is just keeping it and returning to full services. Because as you know, over the past few years, some services have been slowly eking away from Union and moving to what they consider their other campus, Salem Hospital. So the long-term plan, I guess, is 3 to 5 years, increase parking up in Salem, add beds. So do the math, all the patients that are now coming to Union being serviced are supposed to go up there. But as we all know, it's already bursting at the seams with traffic and infrastructure. And the whole point is...
Salem Hospital you're talking
Yes,
about
already
bursting at
is.
the seams.
And
Okay.
imagine if we didn't have any to serve our 90,000 population plus Saugus.
Well, I want
Lynnfield.
to get to Andrea on this one here.
Lynnfield.
What if all 100,000 more patients suddenly had to go to Salem?
But it's not just Saugus, Andrea, correct? I mean, you have, isn't Lynnfield also in the mix,
Lynnfield.
and West Peabody?
West Peabody, Northern Wakefield.
Mm-hmm.
I know people have come from Winthrop and have had their knees done.
I have a friend who lives on just off of Route 1 in Saugus in the condo complex behind over where the Target is. Had a little mishap, fell and cracked his head open. Had to go to the emergency room, and he's not a Lynn guy or anything like that. It was interesting. He said, you know, I drove myself to Union Hospital, and I said, you know, it's not just Lynn people that are relying on Union Hospital. In fact, it's probably more of a problem for people in Saugus than it might be for somebody that, say, lives over by where you are, because you could actually go to Salem, and it doesn't matter that it's in a different town. It's close to you, right? But that doesn't apply to everybody on the other side of Lynn and up in Ward 1 where it's right there and so forth.
But I have a bias for Union Hospital, frankly, and I'm really upset about the fact that no one is born in Lynn anymore. And see, they can't use economics, Catanina, as an excuse anymore.
Right.
Because the clientele, and I mean this, you know, with no disrespect to anybody else, the demographics of Union Hospital, Saugus, West Peabody, Lynnfield, and Ward 1 can support services at Union Hospital. It isn't as if it's
That's
indigents, correct?
That's correct.
Lynn Hospital had a lot of indigent work and a lot of pregnancies that weren't paid for, and therefore they said economically it's not sound, and they shifted it out. And basically, you were born in the West, like I said last week, in the frozen food section.
Frozen food section, Stop and
Stop and
Shop.
Shop,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Which is no longer there. They want, once you were born, they said, let's get out of here, right? And since then, nobody's born in Lynn.
Well, they're born at Salem Hospital
Salem.
now because what
That's where the
Partners
birthing
is
center is,
doing
yeah.
is they're consolidating services in one hospital to save costs. So it's not really saving costs for the consumer, it's saving costs for Partners Healthcare, because if you look, the majority of Lynn residents, let's say, would probably drive themselves to the hospital instead of calling an ambulance. But with the traffic congestion, trying to get down Route 107 and other areas, sometimes I think we might be more resorted to calling an ambulance than trying to fight the traffic.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
that will cost the consumer more at that end than putting the cost
I
of
don't know about the consumer, but the insurance companies love it.
And I want to tell you
Make
something.
a foundation.
I was reading, and I've got a quote here. I'm going to quote you.
Go for it.
Regarding legislation that was passed in 1971 in the state of Massachusetts, and it's actually similar legislation in many of the states across the union. Right?
Okay.
It's about determination of need, and I know that you know all about
Yeah.
determination
Oh,
of
good.
need.
Yes.
She's the girl. The woman.
The premise is the Determination of Need program promotes the availability and accessibility of cost-effective, high-quality care services to the citizens of Massachusetts and assists in controlling healthcare costs. All right? Now, this was done in 1971 by the, you know, at the time, the
was
hospital
pre-Obamacare.
hospital systems of the
Yeah.
time, you know, wasn't Partners back then. They had MERS and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, all the big players made this all happen. And it's supposed to force higher quality of care, but what it does is it stunts growth or competition. It stunts competition. If you can't meet the standards set by Partners, then you can't play.
In the game.
So the
Yeah.
determination of need, in my view, is an anti-competitive practice that has allowed Partners to grow out of control over these.
You find it that way?
Absolutely true. If we look back in history, and even the State Health Task Force, there are a few members on the task force that are affiliated with Partners, and if they're giving the guidelines how hospitals are to be run, they are somehow affiliated with Partners. I think they're setting the laws. So it's sort of like an investment group that says, well, we're going to determine this in 15 years or 10 years from now. And so they're setting the rules now, they're setting the place now, and then when the time comes, they're all set. And
That's a cabal.
And nobody can compete.
Isn't that
Right.
a cabal? Isn't that when a group of folks get together and set the prices? Isn't that against the law, Kevin?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
Calvin?
Not
they
in
might call
25
it a
states.
consortium rather than a cartel.
Right.
What it is it dehumanizes. It takes the human element out of it.
I
It
suppose
makes
it-
everything.
yeah.
They'll look at it as if it's an assembly line and a factory. And there's a lot of similar elements in healthcare, but this is 24-hour day serving humanity. And that's different. There's got to be some flexibility in there. The whole thing is about consolidating the mental wards from other hospitals in one place, by the way. That is a step back. 20 some odd years ago, they were saying, no, the different model is to return people into their own communities, supported by their families and
You're
support
talking
groups
about
as close as you can.
deinstitutionalization?
Oh,
Yes.
damn.
See,
Full
Yeah.
house,
That was a
yeah.
bad idea.
See, I wouldn't
Yeah.
have a problem with the mental health facilities, but for two things. One, they want to put it in a residential neighborhood. That's the first thing. And secondly, their premise is that we need more beds, but they're not actually creating more beds. They're just putting them all in the same place. We need more
Interesting
beds.
point.
There are so many people that, especially with substance abuse and mental health issues, that are being denied access to care and preventative treatments simply because as they say, there's no available beds. It's out of control.
Mental health should be a part, and is by definition part of full-service hospitals.
But why do you throw in drug addiction as mental health? You just mentioned that.
They are, I consider them different, but they are
Yeah,
related.
they saw it. It is different, isn't it?
They put them together a few years ago, or several years ago, to make sure that it's less focus on incarnation and more in rehabilitation. It's,
When they closed down.
we're humans. This is
And
the way we do
the
things.
biggest mistake is to consolidate the drug users in one place. I think it needs to go the opposite way and have it become more private care than kind of this.
Is it a disease, though?
Combined.
Is addiction a disease? I mean, that becomes the
It's
point.
be
Once
determined
it gets
that way.
defined as a disease, then it gets...
It's been defined as a disease by medicine.
And it's
for
been
some
defined
time.
as a disability, too.
It is a
Rightfully
disability.
so?
That would say that I suffer from alcoholism
Okay.
and that I'm disabled. And I am a recovering alcoholic, so I am not suffering the ill effects of the disease, therefore I am not disabled. So I don't know. I
Well,
would
you
say
don't
no.
just quit smoking now. Is smoking a disease? That's an addiction. Is it a disease? I don't know. I mean, we gotta start defining things. You folks were supposed to have had a losing battle a year ago.
Right.
It was de facto the Union Hospital was gone. Yet you're still
Right.
here.
We were supposed to face the determination of need, as Paul had mentioned, and that was supposed to be our first battle, but this antitrust case in the court delayed the battle, and it actually prepared us, understanding the tricks. I'm going to say
Well,
tricks.
I want to stop you here
Maneuvers.
Yeah.
No, let me give credit where credit's due. I recall when you were first bringing this battle forward, that fellow over there, the Honorable Paul Crowley, my co-host, and on the cutting edge, brought up the point that the way to approach this was on an antitrust and take a legal court.
I was
He
just
brought
gonna
that up,
mention
and
that.
you guys said, not a bad idea.
I was just going to mention that.
Am I right?
Another program at
Well,
first, because
you know,
I was going to bring that up. too.
And let me just say that the reason that I feel that way is not because Partners was looking to do what they were doing. It was because we already have an
Yeah.
antitrust arrangement.
Right.
If you want to go to the hospital on the North Shore,
Yeah.
you have to go to Partners. There's no other options.
Right. So
You can,
last, yeah.
unless you live in Beverly, then you can go up to
Yeah.
Leahy, but that's out of, I mean, the people that we service at Bliss, all go to either Union or Salem. That's it.
Right.
We have to take a break, and we'll be back right after this. we're back, can you get a shot of my little guy here? I mean, he's a cute little fella. Paul, he's from your tribe. You're wearing the
Right,
tie,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, Cork County.
Yeah, Cork County. And his birthday's coming up when? Next week.
Today.
What are you talking about? St.
This
Patrick's
whole
Day.
week is St. Patrick's Day.
It is?
The Friendly Knights are meeting tomorrow night down at believe it or not, they're meeting at the Old Time Italian for their annual corned beef and cabbage fundraiser. By the way, they use the money to give scholarships out to
it's a
Lynn's,
good thing.
Lynn students. A great event. If you can make it down there, it's at 6 o'clock tomorrow night.
I like that.
And
So I'm Irish for this week?
everybody's Irish.
Well,
for
my
the week.
kids are part Irish, so, you know, what can I say?
And then I think it's Thursday that, or maybe it's Tuesday of next week. They're going to have the annual sober luncheon down at the Lynn Housing Authority. The Hibernians on St. Patrick's
there,
Day.
yeah.
You can have all the corned beef and cabbage you want for this week. All you got to do is just pay attention to where the events are.
Are we going to have Evan Go Brow up on the screen here?
I don't know.
You
Maybe.
know I could speak Irish, did you? Or Gaelic. Calvin. I don't know why I'm in this thing. Calvin. And I love Calvin as a name, as you know.
I know, cool.
You wanted to bring up a very important point about others could come in, and plus this competition, alleged competition between the Losey group and your group really doesn't exist, is it?
There is no competition. I think that comes up just because two or more groups form with a common mission, just slightly different avenues there. It doesn't mean we're against. In fact, we do creative standouts, and we're standing there with what we've grown to call our inspirational blue signs, and it's a unbroken cacophony of hoots, honks, hollers, and thumbs ups, and at least people smile and wave and nod going by. This is a community unifying movement.
That was the most important piece of the antitrust battle that the state went. It was because of the people's voices.
Yes.
The judge heard the people, and when the people spoke up, they listened.
Otherwise, nothing would happen.
Right.
And the new Attorney General, too, Laura
Yeah.
Haley.
Yep.
And this is what makes this effort so unique,
Yeah.
is that some factions think maybe we should.
Oh, look, there we are standing in front of the courthouse.
Yeah, that's the
Court in
Supreme
Boston.
Judicial Court
Yes.
in Boston.
We went into
And that was a
Boston.
landmark day when Judge Sanders first did some, she continued the case
In
back
September.
in September.
That was
to
September,
January,
and we
right.
stood outside the courthouse while they were hearing the comments, and we were very grateful that she opened the public commentary period and actually allowed public comments on the antitrust suit in
You know what's
Massachusetts.
instructive, though? I mean, you haven't been as visible and active, obviously, because we had 27 feet of snow in
Right.
the last month, right? Now, that should also let people know how difficult it would have been if you had an acute situation to get to Salem Hospital,
Absolutely.
the way those roads were, huh, Paul?
It would have been tough to get to Union Hospital, too.
I'm sure. I see $5 donation here, and that's why I have this up. But what does that all mean?
Well, I just wanted to finish about the fact that there's several groups of different avenues.
Yeah.
One is trying to raise some money just in case there's a legal avenue. But the unique thing about this effort is even the legal counsels we have are saying this is more of keep doing what you're doing.
The
This
way
is
we're doing it
PR.
right now,
This
the
is
way
a
we're
It's
doing it.
political
grassroots.
PR
And
public
where does the
campaign.
how do folks
pays
get
for the
$5 to?
side.
That's the whole point.
When we do fundraisers, there are hands in a bucket. There's people doing admissions to happy hours, things like that for committee events.
Like
So-
Santa, like item Santa?
Right. So we
Okay.
don't need a lot of money. We've spent, what, less than $1,800 or something like that? But the thing is $5 is the cost for this. So if anybody wants to put up some of these on their lawns, we appreciate a $5 donation, but we never turn anybody down.
Right.
I got you.
This gives you, if you give us $5 for one of these signs and it includes the metal stand, you own a piece of SUHA, the Save Union Hospital Advocates. By the way,
SUHA?
people,
Sounds Indian.
SUHA, Save Union Hospital
Sewer,
Advocates.
that's,
And you can go to
Sewer.
SaveUnionHospital.com
get your
to
mind
order
out
one.
of the sewer.
That's the important thing is go to the website because this movement has been about we're the blue sign people and this and that. People saying, what is this? How can I get involved? It's very simple. What are the 5 things people can do, Katerina?
Sign the petition, put a lawn sign up, Bumper
Bumper
stickers.
on the cars.
And I'm starting to see a lot of these around, by the way.
And-
And I want to go to you on this question because you're not from Lynn.
Saugus.
Last week, we coined an expression that he's trying to steal from us, by the way, trying to predate us. Called Lynn's In.
I have proof.
And the idea being that there's really positive movement taking place in Lynn. You're from Saugus. Do you see it?
Yeah, I know the Saugus selectmen were for this committee. The police chief, it takes one officer and his cruiser to go all the way to Salem with an ambulance, where it's much closer to go to Union, plus all the accidents on Route 1, 128, 95. Union's much closer and safer to save lives.
I was
could
asking a
mean the
different question, but
difference.
that's okay. Calvin, how important, and Katrina, how important to a city that's on the rise, there's a hot city that's in, how important is it for them to have a full-service hospital?
Absolutely important. Ask
Yeah.
anybody who honks at our standouts or
I'm just
lives in
going to
our city.
simply say, not for vanity, not for ego, not for pride, but simply for the people. There's 90,000 people in Lynn. There's plus 30,000 surrounding the community. Simply for the people who live here, we need a hospital.
if you look at the
Whether
service.
we're poor or rich, great or
You know what I think we should do? We should let it move to Salem, and then we can annex Highland Avenue. It'll become part of Lynn.
I was doing research.
Oh, don't laugh about that. I mean, that's
If-
facetious.
If that happened, would everybody be happy?
Here's a fun fact. I was doing research at the library, and the reason why they built the hospital in Lynn, because there were many people in the city who were getting sick, and they were putting them in wheelbarrows on the train to Boston to get treated.
Wow.
So it seems like we're flipping time again. There'll be no hospital here. And then everyone's fighting for the subway to come to Lynn.
the bus,
the bus,
Eastern
you know.
Mass
And
But let me ask this. If, in fact, Union Hospital stays open, and we already discussed that the demographic of Union Hospital is Saugus, West Peabody, Lynnfield, right?
and the nexus
Ward
of a
one.
lot of highways, it should have a full trauma center
All right.
too, by the way.
Now, those
Right.
people come to Lynn, and their first impression, I was serviced well in the city of Lynn at Union Hospital. That puts a positive image about the city. They're
Right.
more apt to
Absolutely.
go downtown. They're more apt to think of Lynn from a different perspective.
To buy.
You're taking away an anchor. Paul, do you agree
Right.
with that?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it means an awful lot than just the care that it provides. I mean, it's jobs, it's
Property
part
values.
of the thing that brings us together as a community. I mean, it's a lot of different things, not
Right.
just a place to go when you have an emergent care need.
Right.
It's a
or-
true community hospital, and in that sense, it was built by the community. If you go in the hospital, you'll see all the donors on the walls, GE, all these businesses, even the item by. They held a capital campaign to raise money. The citizens of this area built this hospital, and to say that it belongs to a private entity, we put it in their trust, in their care, and that's an element that belongs to the public, and that's what we're fighting for. We're fighting to keep our
That's
resources.
a good point. Didn't like
is a good
the
point.
Solimini family?
Yeah.
Yes.
They have
Dave's
their
on it.
name on in the emergency room and all that. And,
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
if the emergency room is gone, then what? Do they get their money back?
And that was, and that's a family trust that put that together.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, in another incarnation, our guest here is an architect. She has an eye for beauty and architecture. They did, I understand that the motion picture industry comes to Lynn specifically because of our architecture, because we have buildings that fit the motif that they're trying to do.
Right.
Is Lynn in? I want to get back to that because that's part of
I'll
this.
tell, as an architect intern, when I worked in an architectural firm in Boston, Feingold Alexander that did the parking garage,
Mm-hmm.
I find it a little bit distasteful, but they said that Lynn had the most handsome architecture in Massachusetts, aside from Boston.
And you know what? Union Hospital is a beautiful facility. I love that little stream in the backyard and that walk-around section. It's peaceful. Of course, I can't find my way around. It's
Oh, we
like a
have-
maze.
Right. Well,
Lynn is
that's bad.
beautiful.
Try to find fifth
Yeah.
floor Davenport.
Oh, forget it. Forget it.
Tried that. I know exactly what you mean. All those
If
different
I may
levels.
go into the next steps on what we're doing next with the hospital and how we got to that step. It sort of fell in place almost as if it was godsend. So going back to the antitrust settlement, at the same time we were writing an antitrust complaint to the feds.
Yeah.
And the feds said, well, you got to forward your complaint to the state because they have an open case. So I forwarded the complaint there, and it went public. I didn't mean for my complaint to, it's actually posted online. They redacted many statements in it for privacy. But so we submitted a letter as a group, and then the final letter, there was more information after doing research. And they said, you know, these questions are all too much about the hospital, so they forwarded the complaint to another division in the Attorney General's office. So the antitrust division settled it, said no. So they forwarded our complaint to the nonprofit charities division, which actually has more teeth in the matter. So speaking of misusing public trust, misappropriating monies, the Attorney General has more power to go after nonprofits for misuse of public money than the antitrust department had. So we have a petition to open an investigation with the Attorney General.
And you got all the
I got to stop you right there, because what you're implying is that they're misappropriating funds, and that's never been I've never heard anything like that.
There are some
Who was
questions.
misappropriating?
Well, that's what that was her point was.
Yeah,
That
but who was?
Well,
Who would that be?
I mean, because you got to be careful when
I know, I
we're on
need to
TV.
be careful, right.
We
We
don't
only have 2 minutes to
we don't
find
want to
out.
level
Right.
accusations.
I'm not making accusations. I raised questions to the Attorney General on that subject matter, and the petition is to raise an investigation so those questions are taken seriously.
Right.
And looked into.
Well, we'll pick that up the next time we get together with an update. We got about a minute to go. Andrea?
Well, I just want to add
yeah.
another first for this program was about a year ago. His Honor Al, who I guess is in Aruba,
Yeah.
mentioned
Get
that
tanned.
contrary to popular belief that people think, Partners doesn't have to be the ones running Union Hospital. Leahy or Clinic and a few others could come in and take it over. So it's a desirable
Yeah.
building. It's a desirable community that others want to serve in a full-service hospital capacity. So united for Lynn.
And
I
that's
think
what
the
we
three
want.
amigos all agreed on that.
Yeah,
on the
Beverly Hospital almost did acquire
Yeah.
North Shore Medical Center years ago.
Now, I think we should watch what's happening in Quincy, because they closed the hospital and medical center, but they have a caveat to stay open for 2 years. There's going to be bids on that. So what happens down there, I think, bodes well for up here. So that's like a little canary in the mine I'm looking at.
So you three will come update
Right,
us
yes.
periodically. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Right.
The
sorry,
news, too.
yeah.
This is all news.
So
breaks all the
we're
time.
going after the public attorney lawyers. The Attorney General is a public lawyer. And so when we met with the private lawyer, we decided they wanted $40,000, and a private lawsuit would probably not win. And they told us that the best possible way to keep up the battle is do a public PR and just
Stay right on what
promote
we're doing.
people raising their voices, and we just need to keep doing that.
Makes sense. Folks, don't forget, we have to save Union Hospital. We want to thank you for being here and keep us posted.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks
We'll
for
be back.
having us.
Mom. Looks like it's done.
Don't let salmonella get funky with your chicken. On average, 1 in 6 Americans will get a foodborne illness this year. You can't see these microbes, but they might be there. So learn the right temperature to cook each type of meat. Keep your family safe at foodsafety.com.
And welcome back, Paul. I don't know
Yes,
what's
Joe.
going to happen with Union Hospital, but
Hey, you
keep
know,
pitching.
you put in a good fight, and hopefully it'll work out. I think, you know, not that the Baker administration really has any direct influence on it. I think that indirectly they can. But I'm going to tell you, what I learned about Deval Patrick and what I learned about Martha Coakley, and this is something that we've talked about on a number of occasions, they're politicians first and then attorney general or governor second. They are more interested in playing the politics of things than
well,
they
for
are.
$7,500 a day, wouldn't you?
On the flip side,
Yeah.
a guy like Charlie Baker and I think Maura Healey trying to stake out her own a name for herself and all that kind of stuff, is trying to do the right thing.
Hopefully.
And when the right thing is the prize, I think you tend to get things that are more consistent with what the people want, namely the people of Lynn.
I don't know.
So,
If the people want what they want, then why do they vote for who they vote for? They
well-
better look in the
well-
mirror.
Well,
Because,
that's another story
Oh, no,
entirely.
it's not. You see, they're the ones, you folks out there, in many ways, they're not aware because nobody brings it to their attention. So you can't fault them, right?
Right.
Ignorance is bliss in a lot of ways.
Right.
Now, we're trying here in the City Voice to bring a different perspective for you folks out there. Take a look at things. Make your own judgment.
Right.
You know, I'm not advocating for anything. You know, I'll give you my
Right.
view and my thoughts. And I want to move to a subject that we've brought up last week in touching. We've talked about it consistently.
Very serious problem. Yep.
Yeah, drugs.
Yep.
Now, what's fascinating about drugs, if you take a look in the paper the other day, or in any paper, they always talk about an epidemic. So I don't know whether we have the definition of epidemic up there or whether we're capable of putting up there, but I'll read it from my notes here. And now, I want to qualify, epidemic is usually associated with a disease.
Yep.
And we're not talking about a disease here, we're talking about a definition that's broader.
Well, you don't hear them say, and just to throw this in
Yeah.
there, they say that homelessness is an epidemic. They say crime is an epidemic.
Yeah, they hype it.
Right. It's really a play on words, right?
And what the definition is, in that sense, it's a sudden, widespread occurrence of a particular undesirable phenomenon.
So it really is, it can be
That
used in
is,
those
yeah,
terms,
that is when you take,
Doesn't have to be a disease.
right, when you take disease out of the equation. But there's another word that couples with epidemic, and it's called pandemic, which is the spread. It spreads.
Right.
Instead of it happening only in Lynn, it's now
Right.
in the area. Like the City
Yeah.
Voice is getting pandemic. We're going to be in the total universe shortly.
Right, but that's in a pejorative sense, though. We wouldn't want to be viewed that
No,
way.
we're in
right?
a positive sense. But here's the, you got to make this distinction. Now, listen to this, folks. An epidemic in the disease plague sense gets serious and then it naturally subsides. This is not happening when it comes to heroin overdoses, Paul.
It's not. It's getting worse, and they seem to be, you know, the biggest problem, in my view, is that heroin is very inexpensive, and that's when people, are self-medicating, they're forced to go after the, and money is in short supply. They're forced to choose things that they wouldn't otherwise choose. They may prefer a more expensive drug but can't afford it, so they take something cheaper. And that's what heroin ends up being the drug of choice, because it's so readily available and it's cheap. That coupled with, they create these cocktails. They put different, what's that?
Oh, we're going to get into that. You mentioned these two terms.
Yeah.
I can't pronounce it. I'll try.
It's
Fentanyl?
Fentanyl, which is it comes out of I think it's a Nicoderm patch.
Well, they make a mix with it.
Yeah, and it turns out it's like it creates like this speedball kind of cocktail.
I understand it, but now here's what they're doing. Public safety is trying to say, well, the reason why we've had this spike is because of, and particularly, now don't forget, these were ODs in which 50% died.
Right.
Understand that in 2011, there were 9 deaths from ODs.
Right.
Last year, there were 35.
Right.
That's huge.
Right, and what they're saying, they're not saying that there is definitely the reason, but they're finding a correlation between this as a cutting agent or a mixture.
Yeah, but they're not talking about more serious problems we're going to get into. Tim, how are you this evening?
Good evening, Joe. Yeah, heroin is one thing and one thing only. It is a crime against humanity.
Yep.
It has no medical value. LSD is being tested to cure people for certain things. Medical marijuana, that's an issue debatable. All other drugs made by pharmaceuticals, good or bad, they have some value. Heroin has none.
Right.
Why they have not declared it years ago as such and punished people as such is unbelievable.
Right.
Now, fentanyl, that drug you're talking about, does not come from a nicotine patch. That is a patch in itself. Fentanyl is a narcotic analgesic, which means you take it, your ass feels good. Pardon my French. But it is a drug. It's a manufactured painkiller. I've got a what they call a Merck book here describing drugs last week. When it was in the paper, I looked it up. It's not from a nicotine patch. It is from a methadone patch, a fentanyl patch, a painkiller patch. They have those.
Okay.
My brother had them. He wore them for years. My late brother.
Tim, I want to ask you, because there's a distinction. In fact, this segment which should have been, and it's my fault, it's drugs, the good, the bad, and the ugly. There's 2 definitions I saw, or phrases. One was, do drugs. And do drugs is usually informal for saying you're taking illegal drugs. But when you use the term on drugs, it has a dual meaning. One positive, which is you take it because you're ill, for your high blood pressure or whatever, which is legitimate. Or it's you're on drugs because you're influenced and you have a habit
That's
on
kind of-
narcotics.
A recreational drug, we'll call it, like alcohol. You go to the bar, have a few beers. Friday night, we went out, Sunday night, whatever. It's just alcohol is a drug.
Do you
Nicotine is a drug.
It's fair to bring alcohol and compare alcohol with like heroin or cocaine. I mean, are all drugs equal?
Oh, no, hell no. It depends upon the person. I think addiction, I've got a heavy caffeine and nicotine addiction. Mm-hmm. I've had 2 large Dunkin' Donut coffees today in a large cup I made here at home, and I'm on my last cigarette out of the first pack for the day. They're drugs. Nicotine and caffeine are drugs.
Right.
They add the stuff in. Fentanyl and heroin is just a crime against humanity. You've got to get the legislators. You're busted selling heroin. You don't go to the Middleton jail. You're going to a jail on some island off the coast, and we'll see you in 6 months. And if you want to cooperate with us and tell us everything you know about where you got it, fine. If not, you can go back for another 6 months.
Well,
It's a crime against humanity.
Tim, that's such a good point. I mean, you see all the time where, in the interest of moving an agenda forward, the politicians will, make a leap on something. You'll be here, and all of a sudden it means something entirely unrelated. So why can't they make the argument that if you're selling heroin to a junkie,
It's terrorism.
it's attempted murder?
It is. Oh, if they die, but they don't do it that way.
Aiding-
They don't know. You prove that I sold that person that bag. There's a lot of blue area. If you're selling heroin, you're a terrorist. Treat them as terrorists. That's the only way you're going to stop. I mentioned Iran. They have a big problem over there. They hang them on the streets. I quoted the chief of police last week somewhat. I watched a program 2 weeks ago on this very channel, a 2-part series. They had a forum on heroin addiction. They had all the charts. They patted each other on the back. There had to be $5 million worth worth of salaries in the room. maybe 2 or 3 parents of addicts. Every probation officer in their quote, "Oh, thanks for coming." And the sheriff donated this, and he printed up the booklets. They did not discuss attacking the problem at all. And that's what they have to do. And it's time for the people. You want our vote? Pass the laws.
Right.
It's killing the kids. You know, I'm of age now. Joe, you're of age. We can go any day, and people say, you know, nice guy. He had a life. These are kids.
Right.
Hey, between you. I mean, when I was 18, 20, I was in the Marine Corps. They gave me a tank. I thought I was a man. I was a kid.
Right.
You know, I said, let's be serious. The kids are dying. It's not new. Drugs, heroin went to Ward 1 back in the 60s. You know, most of them are dead. Very few of them are alive.
Problem. Tim, all of a sudden Colorado decides, oh, we're going to legalize marijuana. And other states, Oregon and some others. So what happens is they're sanitizing or they're making it permissible to do drugs. That's the implicit message.
Yeah.
So the sanctions are gone. The taboos are gone. And is it any wonder that there's been an increase in use and abuse?
No, and I would add that the end result is what, in some corners of government, that's what they want. Keeps us preoccupied. It keeps us out of play. You know,
Right.
You know, we're busy taking care of our kids, or dealing with the trouble in the neighborhood, or whatever it is that you're doing. You know, it's a distraction from what they're doing.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Katerina, how are you this evening?
Good. How are you again?
Hey, this isn't fair.
Of course it is.
Were you just on?
This is an important subject too.
I know this is a very important subject to you. What's your question, or what's your comment?
Well, my comment is, I believe the whole problem could be solved if they gave out Suboxone free in the streets instead of just giving out the shot to what's the shot called? Naloxone? I really forget the name, but it has the same ingredient. And so why is the government passing out shots to help people with overdoses when they can prevent overdoses by simply passing out Suboxone and eliminating the problem altogether? I'm not for pharmaceuticals, but this is one miracle drug that helps alcoholism and opiate abuse.
Right. You know, and you know, doing something on those lines along. But another important thing is putting together legitimate resources to actually combat the issue when somebody has the problem. As it works today, if somebody decides that they want to try to fix their problem, they make the decision that they're going to go into a treatment facility, right? The way it goes is you go to the emergency room. They stay in there 24 hours till you kind of come down a little bit, and then and this is the big if there's a bed out there, they ship you to the bed, and you're there for 3 or 4 days, and then you're back on the street again. Heroin is not going to be overcome by any of that, and that's if you can get a bed. So if you get a bed, you get 3 or 4 days of treatment, and then you're on your own again. And what happens when you're on your own? That disease is so insidious that they go right back to it.
Hey, I had a hard time quitting cigarettes, so I know it's not an easy thing when you have an addiction. We got to go to break very shortly, but I want to mention one term, and we'll get back to it when we come back from this break, and it's Narcan. You've heard of Narcan?
Yes.
think that's the way you pronounce it. So we're going to take a break. We'll be back with drugs and get a job. Get a job. It's an interesting segment. Stay tuned.
Don't let salmonella get funky with your chicken. On average, 1 in 6 Americans will get a foodborne illness this year. You can't see these microbes, but they might be there. So learn the right temperature to cook each type of meat. Keep your family safe at Food Safety Podcast. Welcome to the LynnCAM TV show. Program that focuses on recommending
we're back. Segment 4.
Yep, this is it.
Yeah, and our number here is 781-596-9641. The good, the bad, and the ugly of drugs.
Yeah.
And when we took the break, I mentioned this thing called Narcan. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
And I'm going to argue that Narcan may contribute rather than help the situation. So you explain to the folks what Narcan does.
Sure. So some police officers carry it, and I understand that it's not all of them. I don't know whether it's a choice or subject to availability or where and what community you're in. But some police officers are carrying around this Narcan, and if they see a heroin user going into some type of overdose
Right.
situation, they can send a blast into the, it's a nasal injection. They blast it into their nose, and it shocks them back out of their stupor, if you will, and saves their lives. Saves their
Pulp Fiction. Remember Pulp Fiction? Where
Yep.
they jabbed the...
right. Yeah, that was a little more radical, but yeah.
Right, with the adrenaline blast.
Right,
Okay.
right.
My argument is this. Because these folks have the safety blanket known as Narcan, they say, what the heck, I'll take a risk if bad things happen. You can revive me. That, I think, is false security and creates a problem. For example, I think that this reliance on condoms in order to prevent sexually transmitted diseases...
But it also encourages promiscuity.
And not only that, I'm not effective.
Right.
There's failure rates.
Right.
And I think this is what's happened with Narcan. Is that now people say, oh, well, I can have a good time, and if I'm going bad, just give me a blast.
Well, so then you have to ask the question, and it's not an easy answer.
No.
You have to ask the question, what about the person who doesn't even know about the existence of Narcan? And so if you don't allow Narcan to be used, then somebody who didn't even
Do you
know about
honestly
it.
believe that drug addicts don't know what Narcan is? I mean, think about it. Matt, how are you this evening? Matt?
Good. How are you, Joe?
Pretty well, thank you.
Hi, Matt.
How you doing, Paul? I'm just calling in. Tim has a very valid point about heroin being a plague on humanity and all that.
Yeah.
I just buried my 26-year-old nephew last month.
Oh.
He OD'd.
What a shame.
That's a sad...
And the thing is the fentanyl patch, that will kill you with itself. So what they're doing is the drug dealers are putting more fentanyl in there instead of heroin. So it's making it more stronger.
Really? That's what you were talking about before, Paul, weren't you?
Yeah.
Kind of make a cocktail out of it.
But Matt, Paul made up a
What?
great point. I want to throw it at you because, it's from you people. You're the voice. Paul suggested that a drug dealer should have a more strict standard. I mean, it's fundamentally aiding and abetting death, isn't it? Manslaughter?
Right.
Well,
that?
in Massachusetts does have the law. If somebody ODs in your house, you can be held liable for that.
Can you?
I wasn't aware of that, but I mean, having it happen in your house is a lot different than, selling it to somebody. I mean, how do you attack supply and demand? The natural phenomenon of supply and demand. You have to upset the supply and upset the demand, don't you? If you want to.
Yes.
So how do you upset the supply? You go after the dealers. You make the penalty for dealing that much worse than it already is, and they'll be less inclined to do it. You make the alternatives to heroin better. Give people a chance to get out of it, have a chance to get better. You eliminate the need for the supply.
What do you think about that, Matt?
Yeah, you could do that, but it's, that's where Kevin Carpenter and the police, because you got to remember, heroin comes from down south. It comes from Mexico and everything, so you're going to stop that.
That's a good point.
Secure the border.
That's a good point.
Yep, you said it, secure the border.
Yeah. Matt, thank
And the thing-
you. Oh, made some good points. Paul, I want to go back a little bit on this, though. You mentioned supply and demand. I read a book many years ago. It was back in 1985, I think, or 1990, roughly. It was called The Octopus. and it was all about the international mafia, and they were the first ones to come up with heroin. There was no market there was no demand, but they made the product and created a demand intentionally. Okay, they anticipated. It's like there was no demand for an iPhone or a smartphone. Nobody knew what they were.
Right.
You create the product and you create your own market. It's the other way around.
Right.
All right, so you're absolutely right. You don't go after demand, you shut off supply.
Well, you have to do both, I think.
Yes, but supply is more important than demand.
Right.
You know, demand is persuasion. Why did you stop drinking? Why did I stop smoking? Because we were bombarded with all the facts that finally it penetrated our brain that this is not a good idea. This doesn't happen with cocaine and heroin. They're very addictive, and the rate of returning after going to
Right.
is very high.
Right.
It's a much different thing. Do we have somebody on the line here? Oh, Matt, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was listening to you. You were making some good points. I was just going to throw out this last thing, and then I was going to get off the phone, but you went off on your thing, but that's good. The thing with giving out Suboxone free,
Yeah.
the drug users will take it and either sell it to get heroin, or they buy some heroin and mix the Suboxone with it.
So once again, no easy answers here.
No, there aren't.
And here's one more thing, and I'll let you guys go.
Yep.
I don't know if it was the FDA, I just heard it today, they're coming out with a new kind of alcohol. It's called Palacol. It's a powder, and you mix it. And it's already been approved. The guy's supposed to come out with it this summer.
Oh.
Imagine mixing that with heroin.
So now you can shoot up alcohol? Oh.
I mean,
What you're supposed to do is it comes in a pouch, and you're supposed to mix water to it.
If there's any virtue from a getting high perspective in taking it intravenously, they'll do it, right?
Yeah.
If there's a way to liquefy it down and get it into a needle so that you can stick it in your arm.
but is this the progress of mankind? That we are all going to be anesthetized? We're all going to be in some type of stupor? You know, with this, are we always looking for pleasure?
You know,
this is the problem.
I'm going to put my tin hat on here.
You absolutely,
My tin hat.
probably put it on.
I believe strongly that there really is no resolve with the elite of this world who essentially run everything. They do not want to stop the heroin epidemic, the cocaine
'cause
epidemic. They make the money on it, but they also keep us preoccupied. So I'd say it's a conspiracy. The conspiracy is to take the middle America and down and make them so preoccupied. It's the bread and circus kind of
Oh, no question.
scenario.
By the way, our show has gone like a bullet tonight, quicker than I realized. We only have a few minutes left, and you have to give a summation of what's upcoming.
Okay.
And wait a minute, we didn't get to the segment on get a job, so I'm going to throw a couple of stats out there for the people to think about, and maybe carry over to next week.
Okay.
Population of the United States, probably, roughly,
315 million.
315, 320.
Yeah.
How many people do you think are not working?
100 million?
That's right. Very good.
Yeah.
That's 41%. People don't realize that. So this unemployment rate that Obama talks about is a lot of crap. You have a nation, folks, in which 41% of the people aren't working, and nor do they care to work.
Right?
You
And,
can't sustain a nation.
and the government is more than happy to
Perpetuate it.
figure out a way to subsidize their lifestyle. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, you know what happened? That's what the Caesars did. It was called the Colosseum.
Right.
Give them games, give them free bread, give them the baths and the whole bit, and what happened to the empire?
Down the
It
tubes.
imploded.
The only question is when.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, Paul, updates.
So next
and by
week-
the way, we're on YouTube and Twitter.
Okay, St. Patrick's Day is coming up.
Oh.
That's why the tie. Just want to remind everybody of Friendly Nights tomorrow night, 6 o'clock at the Old Time Italian. Next week, we have Francis Martinez from the North Shore Latino Business Association. And the following week, I believe, is on April 1st, we have
Dan Kale?
Charlie Gallo from the school committee. Soon,
then-
soon to be former school committee member.
And we're going to have the council president
Yep, that's in a couple of weeks. Yep.
But you know what I'm going to try to pull off?
What's that?
You mentioned Charlie Baker, and he's doing a big job on drugs, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm going to get one of his chief of staffs. I'm going to try to get him on the show. I'd love to get him on the show with Danny Kael. Two young guys,
Very different views.
different views, although both Democrats. You know, Charlie Baker is not an ideologue.
No.
He's got a lot of Democrats in the administration.
Right.
I'm going to try to pull that off. That'd be a dynamic show, don't you think?
I'd definitely like to get him and or Karen Polito on the show.
Oh, well, we're going to work that out because you and I have a date with Destiny since we're becoming so important in the media world. And 1.5 minutes, is that 95 seconds or something like that?
Right.
Or 75
Yeah, so
seconds?
as a reminder, if you want to watch us streaming online now, you can watch us on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/LynnCAM TV and you can see tonight's show, the last couple of shows, and all shows from here on out. We'll be posting them by the end of the week, so figure on Friday of the week of the show, you should be able to see the Wednesday show.
And by the way, as Paul pointed out, we're on our way to Peabody. That's our first step. And from there, the state, the nation, the universe.
Right.
The City Voice will see you next Wednesday at 7. Have a great week. A minute to end I hear I was going out. Paul,
Are we still...
we have a minute to go. Go ahead. Come on, are you filling this dead space, Paul?
we
My
have 4
timing's
minutes.
We got a
4
minute to
minutes.
go.
Okay, so...
Yeah, we got a minute.
Okay.
Nobody's calling. So,
So let's get back to this whole discussion about the difference between Baker and Maura Healey and DeVal Patrick and Martha Coakley. And
competence.
Competence is a very big part of it, but it's a desire to do the right thing. And whereas people who are politicians first and foremost, the only thing they're interested in is their own personal gain and what's good for them and their party. And look at DeVal Patrick. What does he do after he gets a job at MIT? He's probably going to get $300,000 to help keep the tuition up at the school, and now he's going to be part of the 2024 Olympic Committee thing, and he's going to get $7,500 a day to go around and press the flesh.
And he won't be as competent as Mitt Romney. On that note, folks, the Olympics is coming, but we are ready to take on the universe. The City Voice. Have a great week.
This is my town, this is my city.